Chargers Now is presented by Prize Picks. I am your host, Will Ortner. Yesterday, we let you know all about the UDFAs that the Chargers brought in after the 2026 NFL Draft. Today, we're going to grade all of the players. Do I and producer Searle think that a player is going to make an instant impact on the roster? Do we think that a player might have to wait a little bit and develop? Or does it feel like maybe that player is more of just a camp body? We're going to give you our grades on every single player, and we'll ask you to grade those players as well. But before we get into the video, if you want the Chargers rookies to be some absolute beasts, make sure that you like the video today. We're trying to manifest some good vibes. I'm not always the biggest believer in manifestation, but sometimes you got to just tell yourself that you're going to have a good day and that these Chargers players are going to be great. So hit that thumbs up button. Let's start with safety, Noah Avinger from Utah State. I really like this kid. I think that he grew into being a very good player for Utah State. Definitely someone that's going to add into the special teams, I think, if he ends up making the squad. First team All-Mountain West honors. Had a very good 2025. Ended up having 10 pass breakups, 3 interceptions. This is a kid that I think as the Chargers try and get younger in that safety position, in that safety room, you're going to potentially see him playing a couple years down the line. Now, I did give him a B-, and so did producer Searle. We're both kind of on the same page here of he's going to have to take some time to develop. It's no harm, no foul if he doesn't, but maybe there is an opportunity for some other guys in that secondary to get playing time a little bit sooner. Let's talk about Barton, the linebacker from Utah, staying in the same state. I like this kid, and I might be a little bit higher on him than most just because he was a team captain over there at Utah. He was someone who was a Pac-12 freshman of the year, played in a lot of football games, has good size, good build, really good instinct, so he's able to be in the right spots at the right time. Although, after being the freshman of the year, didn't really see anything else from him. On the defensive side of the football, you can use him in the blitz game, although it's not necessarily his expertise. Does decent in coverage and even played a little bit on the offensive side. Obviously, I'm a little bit higher on him than producer Searle here. I have him as an A. Producer Searle says A-, because he believes that you shouldn't be regressing or staying the same. You should always be progressing, and I think that's important too. Jerand Bradley is the next person we're going to talk about, tight end from Kansas State. Now, this is a guy who's bounced around a little bit, ending his career at Kansas State, but he definitely did not start there. Definitely has good size, and I do feel like with his frame could potentially pack a little bit more weight on him. Not the most receptions, but then again, last year at Kansas State was a little bit of a dumpster fire, so that does kind of make some sense to me. Bounced around to a couple different schools, Texas Tech, Boston College, before he ended up finishing at Kansas State. I ended up giving him a B in my personal opinion. It definitely feels like he's being brought in to really only be a special teams guy. I don't know that he can end up being that tight end number 2 or 3, whatever you need in this roster. But I don't know that he can't be that either. Producer Searle likes his football IQ. If you're able to bounce around to a couple different schools, you got to be able to pick up the offense. And if you're picking up the offense, that means you can play for him. Next, we'll talk about the rest of the UDFAs that the Chargers signed. But first, I got to let you know that today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app and is the best place to win cash while watching sports. With playoff basketball finally here, there's no better time to cash in than with our friends at Prize Picks. And I'll tell you this, the app is really easy to use. To qualify for a Prize Picks lineup, pick 2 to 6 players and select more or less on stat projections, including points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers, hits, home runs, strikeouts, and several others across all sports. With the new social feeds feature, you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups with a single click. That, of course, includes me and producer Searle. You follow us on Prize Picks and get the picks before they even get posted on the show. I have a lineup for the basketball action going on later on this evening. SGA, more on his points. Jaden McDaniels, more on his rebounds. Nikola Jokic, more on his PRA. That's points, rebounds, and assists. New user offer. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks. Clickable link to download the app is in the comments and descriptions. Let's talk about Sincere Brown, wide receiver from Colorado next. Now, this is an interesting wide receiver, a little bit on the taller side, going to potentially give you an option to throw the ball up too high, down low in the red zone, has a little bit of good speed, right? Not going to blow you away, but also at the same time, definitely not bad. Has some good yards after the catch, and I do think that that is going to be important. In my personal opinion, when I look at a kid like Sincere Brown, I like that he adds something to this offense that you don't really have. Now, we know with Mike McDaniels, his type of offense, you really only have one big receiver. That's Quentin Johnston right now. But I do think that there's going to be avenue for Sincere Brown. Got him with a B+. Producer Searle, he's got him with a B. Older player, started his career in 2020. So is there a lot of progression that's going to be able to go there? Not necessarily. And that, of course, is Producer Searle. So don't shoot the messenger on that one. Jahmeer Carter, defensive lineman from Virginia. Let's talk about him next. Interested to see what he'll be adding into this team or what he could potentially be adding. He's an older player, played 6 years at Virginia, ended up playing in a total of 69 games, had over 164 tackles, which isn't something that you necessarily see. Now, unfortunately, last year was not necessarily his best year. He had on his career 8.5 tackles for loss, only got one last year. So that is something interesting of note. In my personal opinion, I'm giving Carter a B+, not necessarily for the production on the field, although he does a great job of getting tackles, great run stopper. You need defensive linemen, and you need younger defensive linemen. Is this someone who could be on the roster, on the P squad for a year or two, build up into there, maybe get some depth? Producer Searle, I think he's out on anyone from the ACC. Not a big fan of him. Next, let's talk about Gregory Desrosiers. Excuse me. Got to check my pronunciation guide down below. To the people who caught my pronouncing incorrectly, you beat me. Anyways, let's talk about the Memphis running back. 6-year senior, someone who is a big boom or bust type of a player. He earned the Doak Walker National Running Back of the Week award late in September, had a 204 3-touchdown game against Florida Atlantic. So he's definitely someone who can kind of pop on screen. You see that very high yards per average, catches the ball out of the backfield really well. I would like to see a little bit more consistent production, but sometimes when you have that speed, that can really make it pop. That's why I've got him at an A-. I think he could add into this team. Producer Searle looks at him and he says, yes, I definitely believe that this kid can be an A, especially with the system that he's going into. He's going into the Mike McDaniel system. And so whenever you can get a speedy running back, look at Devon Achane, look at guys like Raheem Mostert, look at the rest of that crew. That is where you can see these types of running backs really pop. All right, we got him right this time. Devin Grant, safety out of Syracuse. I'm going to take the egg on my face for the previous video. Excited to see what he can do. Started his career in Buffalo, finished his last couple of years over at Syracuse, played in 22 total games, ended up having 16 starts. Not a ton of tackles last year, but obviously Syracuse kind of went by the wayside. Definitely someone that I like, and definitely someone that I think can really add in to this team. I got him at an A-. I like a bigger safety that's going to be able to go in and make some plays. Producer Searle says B+. But hey, you know what? I think there is a lot of guys in that safety room right now that sometimes you just got to throw some bodies in there and see who the strongest will be and let them kind of take over that role. Hit that sub button on Chargers now. We're going to keep you covered. Hey, I understand that now that the draft's over, there's not a whole lot of football stuff until the end of July, but there are some football things in May and in June and in the beginnings of July. We're going to be here covering it. You don't want to miss any of that. Let's talk about Jacobian Guillory, the defensive lineman from LSU. I was practicing that name late at night. Don't look into my hobbies. All right, another interesting interior defensive lineman. You can see this a lot with the UDFAs for the Chargers. They want to go in and get these defensive tackles, let them battle it out, see what happens. Played in 54 games. Obviously had a lot of success stopping the run. Not really a pass rusher, but you don't really need him to be that. I've got this here pretty much easy for me. That's a B- grade. Producer Searle's got it at a B. I get where he's coming from. The run stopping ability is really great. I'd like to see a little bit more in the pass rush game there. Niles King, edge from San Diego State, halfway there, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start really rifling through these guys. Fantastic player, bumped up from Division II, has the size to be a really good edge rusher for the long run. Ended up getting 6.5 sacks last year and 10 tackles for a loss, so that's really good. Obviously, you know me, I'm going to help out my D2 brother, and that's an A. Great size. Going to take a little bit to develop, a year or two, but I really like him. Producer Searle says, if you didn't go to Nebraska, you're not getting an A from me. I'm just kidding. But he did get a kick out of that with his upside-down Nebraska hat on. Devonte Ross, let's talk about the wide receiver from Penn State next. Interesting player, someone that spent a lot of time over at Troy, very undersized for a wide receiver, but definitely someone that fits in the Mike McDaniel type of scheme and system. Had a decent amount of catches despite kind of Penn State falling by the wayside. A lot of success in his career over at Troy as well. I'm giving this a B+. Producer Searle agrees with me. He fits the mold, probably more of a special teams type of a guy. Don't be shocked if you see him make the practice squad, not necessarily the roster. Rodney Shelley, cornerback from Georgia Tech, is next. Let's talk about him and all the fun that we can breaking down this 4-year member of the Yellow Jackets over there with Georgia Tech. Played in 45 total games. Ended up having 11 interceptions leading the team this last season. I give this a B+ signing. A little smaller cornerback, but someone who can play in the slot, dime. If you want to go with a smaller nickel, he can be your guy. Going to be a special teams type of a guy for the most part. To me, that gives him a lot of versatility. I value that. B+. Producer Searle says, B- to me. Avery Smith, cornerback out of Toledo. Interesting to see how he fits in with this team because I do think that he showed that he can have a lot of success during his time in Toledo, but you would have liked to see him take a little bit of a bigger step his senior year. Undersized player who definitely has a lot of toughness, super high effort. Definitely has some issues with his speed, though. There's a reason why he's at Toledo. Didn't see him transfer out, saw him stay. I do wish the best for him. To me, he's an A type of a guy, someone that was probably supposed to be drafted, didn't end up getting drafted. Anytime you can get these work hard type of a guys that are like coaches' sons, all the good stuff. I just think very highly of them, and I hope that he ends up making at least a run on this team. I'm going to give that an A-. Jacob Spomer, center from Fresno State, is next. This is an interesting one. Now, he's very technically sound, does a great job of being in front of others, but he is on the smaller end. Started out his career as a JUCO guy before he ended up going over to Fresno State. Now, he is a center, could potentially bounce out to guard, but he's got to add a lot of weight. I'll just be honest about that. I'm going to give him a B-. There are people who can overcome their size issues. There are people that can't. Real ones remember Joey Hunt, the former center, played it with a couple of different teams, mainly Seattle and Indianapolis. B- on Spomer here, in my personal opinion, because I remember Hunt a lot, and it was a lot of losing slowly. Let's just say that. If you love the LA Chargers, make sure you hit the thumbs up button on today's video. All right, let's talk about Evan Svoboda, and I butchered it again. One day I'll get it right. Svoboda, and there's a V in there. All right, now this is a guy who started out as a quarterback, ended up going and moving over to tight end. Really good size. I'd be interested if he ends up being someone that could be used as like a gadget guy. But if his career continues on the path that it is, let's just be honest. He's a third, maybe a fourth tight end at best, and most teams aren't going to carry that. So that's a B, unless you want to use him as a gadget guy. Now, he could grow into being a better tight end. That's possible. He didn't pick up the position until very recently, but something to keep an eye on. Let's talk about Nnamdi Tucker next, edge rusher out of Western Michigan. This is a Chris O'Leary signing through and through. Had a lot of success, Tucker, that is, with O'Leary last season over at Western Michigan. Really coming off a dominant season, really good pass rush plan, has the ability to really use his hands. Not great in the run, not overly physical, not overly strong, but he was someone that had, 14.5 sacks last season to lead Division I. I'd say that's pretty darn good. That's an A to me. That's a scheme fit. That's a good player. He's got to bump up into what you're doing at the next level, but I really like that. Producer Searle says, I need to see a little bit more other than just great MAC play. Terry Webb, defensive lineman from SMU, is next. Another interior defensive lineman. Very clear that Joe Ortiz wanted to attack that position with the UDFAs. End up actually getting a decent pass rush from the interior of the defensive line, 5.5 sacks, 24 pressures. Not a bad number there for an interior defensive lineman either. A minus. I think he's got a pretty good shot, actually, in my opinion, of at least finding a spot on the roster. Now that might mean that he's someone that's bouncing between practice squad, active roster, practice squad, active roster. But if you're able to get after the quarterbacks, especially from the interior of a defensive line, there's always a spot for you. Let's talk about Jerry Wilson next, cornerback out of Florida State. Jeremiah Wilson, excuse me. Let's use his full name there. Very much like what he's been doing. Someone who's going to be a little bit on the smaller end. Again, he definitely can be on the inside, bounce over to the outside as well if need be. Someone who earned all ACC honorable mention honors and had a total of 3 interceptions. I'm giving this a B+ grade. I think that with the corners you have on the roster already, you're pretty solid in LA, but there's still some room to grow there. Producer Searle says, hey, when you're getting 3 interceptions, that's always going to be a big deal to me. Let's wrap it up with Isaiah World, offensive tackle from Oregon. Obviously, a lot of people in Los Angeles are very excited about this move here. I think I might be one of the few that are a little bit more damp on World. And it's not really to kind of poo-poo him. It's just that I expected more out of him last year with how big of a body he is. He's relatively in the right spot, has decent body control, but he's not technically great. He was great against lower competition. The minute he had to play against the upper tier of the Big Ten, he really struggled. I'm giving him a B grade here. He's also coming off that ACL tear, so he's not going to do anything for this roster this year unless maybe he comes back at the very end. So really this is more of him, just get him on your roster and then see what he could potentially do in a couple of years. Searle loves the potential. Grade the Chargers UDFAs down below in the comment section. You heard my grades. You heard producer Searle's grades. Make sure that you're down below in that comment section using your right to sound off and make your opinion known. Thank you guys so much for viewing today's video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Just because the season is kind of taking a turn for a little bit less newsy, a little more rumory, doesn't mean that we are going anywhere. Plus, you want to make sure that you hit that subscribe button right now, so then that way you can hang out with us throughout the entire year, because I'm telling you right now, the season is about to start. And when the season starts, we are going to be here for you for the Los Angeles Chargers. Thank you guys so much for viewing today's video. Bolt up.